This podcast serves Middle Tennessee every weekday morning, and it's made possible by member support. Learn how you can make a difference at WPLN.org/support.
This is the Nashvillager Podcast. It's June 11th, 2025. The city of Hendersonville, as an incorporated official community with its own local government, was founded 57 years ago today. Or at least it tried to be. And it's actually a lot older than that. There's a lot to the story. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with historical context from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. In some ways, Hendersonville is almost as old as Nashville. And in fact, what may be the oldest standing home in all of Middle Tennessee is in Hendersonville. It's called Rock Castle. And a man named Daniel Smith began building it in 1784. He was a Revolutionary War veteran, and he was granted the land as payment for his service. Smith was a pretty important figure in the political and military life of early Middle Tennessee, or as it was called at the time, the Miro District. Smith was commander of the district. He chaired the committee that wrote Tennessee's first constitution. And once this became a state in its own right, he went to D.C. as a senator. A few years after Smith moved here, another Revolutionary veteran named William Henderson brought his family to live near Rock Castle. After about a decade, there were enough others living in the area to justify mail service, and Henderson became the postmaster. Maybe that's why his name got attached to the place as a whole. How should we address the mail to that community? Well, Henderson's going to handle it, so Hendersonville? Honestly, that's how a lot of small-town names emerged, because people gather where other people are, regardless of the fact that the place doesn't have a name, and one just sort of pops into use out of convenience in the moment when they suddenly need to call it something. Anyway, that was how a relatively small and quiet farming community got its start, and that's pretty much all Hendersonville was for a very long time. They had a post office, and honestly, that was enough. The county government was all the residents needed to handle official sorts of things. There was no need to incorporate. And then came the dam. The federal government made the decision in 1946 to dam up the Cumberland River east of Nashville in order to generate hydroelectric power. It took the Army Corps of Engineers several years to design the structure, another couple to build it. But in 1954, the dam was completed and Old Hickory Lake was formed with banks that came right up to Hendersonville. Suddenly, Sumner County had lots of waterfront property. And over on Music Row, there were a bunch of country music stars who were starting to make seriously good money. It was a match made in heaven. That lake became the place for country stars of that era to build grand homes. And of course, Americans were just generally falling in love with suburban life at that time. So regular folks were drawn out to the same area too. Hendersonville went through an absolute population boom. By the mid-'60s, it was big enough to have its own high school and its own utility district. It was Tennessee's largest unincorporated community. Now, some people there loved the idea that they could live the suburban lifestyle without the red tape of a local government. But other folks were frustrated. That utility essentially acted as the community's de facto government. By deciding whether or not it would run infrastructure out to an area, it controlled the way the community grew and what kind of development was allowed. But the people calling the shots weren't elected, and certain services weren't in place, things that most communities want and need once they reach a certain size, like a dedicated police department instead of just relying on the sheriff's office to keep the peace, a parks department, a zoning office. Incorporation wasn't a fast and easy thing. It took a referendum vote. And the first time one was attempted in 1964, it failed. But fans of incorporation realized that there was a concentration of people who liked the idea, but whose property hadn't been included in the originally proposed city limits. So the map was redrawn. A second referendum was held. And that one passed on this day in 1968. The Hendersonville Utility District's leaders did not like that at all. They sued, attempting to stop the new city council members from taking office. It took more than a year to sort it all out in court. But finally, it was official. Hendersonville became its own city. In just a few minutes, this week's edition of What Where Wednesday. That's coming up after the newscast.
You know how important WPLN News has been to you and your family, and you have seen how high-quality local journalism is necessary to a thriving community. You can ensure that this service stays strong and stays available to all of Nashville and Middle Tennessee. Join the Producers Circle with your gift of $100 or more each month and make the bold statement that you support the mission of a more informed and engaged community. Start your philanthropic journey with Nashville Public Radio today at WPLN.org.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. Another small plane has crashed in Middle Tennessee, the second in 2 days. This one landed outside of Murfreesboro yesterday afternoon in a wooded area near Middle Tennessee State University. The city's Fire and Rescue Department reports 3 passengers are in stable condition after being hospitalized. On Sunday, a skydiving plane went down near Tullahoma. All 21 people on board survived. 6, including the pilot, were treated for injuries in local hospitals. The company, Skydive Tennessee, says the Tullahoma crash resulted from an aborted takeoff from the regional airport, and the airplane, a 1967 Twin Otter, was up to date on its maintenance. The company says it's stunned by the accident and grateful for the quick work of first responders. The Federal Aviation Commission is investigating both incidents. Nashville's main downtown library will remain closed through the weekend after the partial collapse of the adjacent parking garage. Investigators are working to determine what started a fire around 2 a.m. Tuesday and say thus far that there's no sign of foul play. Engineers are also examining the building. Officials say the fire caused multiple explosions as cars parked in the structure ignited and that a portion of the building at 6th and Commerce collapsed. The garage, owned by Nashville's Department of Transportation and operated by the Downtown Partnership, services the library and offers monthly parking options. 2 years ago, the garage closed for 3 weeks because of concerns over the safety of its structural integrity. Delays in food assistance triggered a class action lawsuit against Tennessee's Department of Human Services earlier this year. Now the agency will likely have to follow an improvement plan for managing its Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, otherwise known as SNAP. WPLN's health reporter Catherine Sweeney tells us a federal court has ordered the agency to cooperate.
The court is taking the challenge against DHS seriously. Earlier this year, about a dozen Tennesseans filed a class action lawsuit against the agency. They had been wrongfully denied SNAP benefits, and delays in the appeals process left them in financial ruin. The court has appointed a special master, a highly trained go-between, assigned to oversee complicated cases like this one. Edward L. Stanton III, a former U.S. attorney with experience in mediation and corporate compliance, will help the challengers and DHS build a potential remediation plan. The court tapped Oklahoma's former Department of Human Services director, Ed Lake, to help investigate Tennessee's SNAP program and write recommendations for improvement. The state will foot the bill for the process, which could last years. In 2000, a similar challenge against Tennessee's Department of Children's Services involved more than 15 years of court oversight. Catherine Sweeney, WPLN News.
Nashville is sharing its latest census of the city's unhoused community. Volunteers canvassed across the county on a single night in January. They met more than 2,100 people in shelters or who were living unsheltered, like in camps or in vehicles. The count is 4% higher than the prior year and slightly above the city average in recent years. In contrast, it's much lower than the rise in homelessness seen nationwide. Metro officials note that this year's counting night was below freezing, which opened additional shelters, and that can lead to higher counts. The city finds that 41% of unsheltered Nashvillians report mental health needs, and about 3/4 reported having a disability. Well, it's hot out, and Percy Priest Lake is a local destination that offers many locals a chance to cool down. Unfortunately, several people have drowned at Percy Priest in the last few years. Almost all were not wearing a personal flotation device, or PFD. David Crane heads a team of certified divers who help with search and rescue operations in the lake.
I have been doing recovery since '92. And I have yet to recover a drowning victim that was wearing a life jacket.
Crane suggests wearing a PFD while out on the water at Percy Priest. The lake can pose more of a challenge than most swimmers are aware of.
I always say that PFDs are just like seatbelts. They don't work if you don't wear them.
You can catch a full episode about Percy Priest in the This Is Nashville podcast feed. The nominees for the 24th Annual Americana Honors and Awards were announced yesterday. Several previous winners received repeat nods, including Sierra Farrell, Charlie Crockett, Billy Strings, and Jason Isbell. One thing that stands out about this year's nominees is how many straddle Americana and indie rock. That's true of at least one performer in each category, from Waxahachie's Artist of the Year nod to the Duo Group of the Year mention received by Julian Baker and Torres, as well as the presence of both MJ Lenderman and Medium Build on the Emerging Artist list. Jonathan Mayers, the co-founder of Bonnaroo Music and Arts Festival, has died just days before this year's event. Mayers and 3 others founded the festival in 2002 and decided to hold it in Manchester, Tennessee. It was an immediate success and has become one of the biggest annual music festivals in the United States. It's hosted artists like Elton John, Phish, and U2, and attracts about 80,000 attendees each year. The success of Bonnaroo created a blueprint for music festivals around the country. Mayers and his partners also launched Outside Lands in San Francisco and Vegas in Las Vegas. In 2021, Mayers was terminated from his position at Superfly, the company he helped found. Billboard reports the cause of death is unknown at this time. Mayers was 51 years old. The 23rd Bonnaroo Music and Arts Festival takes place this weekend in Manchester. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. There's always plenty of music on offer in Nashville, sure. But do we always make room for the sounds of Africa? Marquise says that's about to be an option.
I'm Marquise Munson, here with another edition of Nashville Public Radio's What We're Wednesday, keeping you up to date with the happenings in Nashville this week. The annual Bonnaroo Music and Arts Festival runs through this weekend in Manchester. For those staying closer to Nashville, live music opportunities begin tonight with WNXP presents Geese at the Blue Room.
Some are born with the psychic reflection, catastrophic when they go in the street, because the people like you naturally leaving me blind to all time and all direction.
On Friday night, you can check out Soul of the 90s, an ode to hip-hop and R&B at the National Museum of African American Music. On Saturday morning, the Tennessee State Museum hosts TN Writers and Stories with Charlie Peacock's Roots and Rhythm, A Life in Music, in conversation with our very own Jason Moon Wilkins. Back at the Blue Room on Saturday afternoon, Yeah Rock Camp Showcase is happening, and that night, Mix It Up, free multi-genre showcase is at the 5 spot. On Sunday at the Basement East, 615 Day featuring former WNXP Nashville Artists of the Month, 61 Tribe, and Bean take the stage. For more events, head over to WNXP.org/events.
Can't seem to keep myself from hating you. Time after time you let me down, but tired of being the same as coming back around.
This week for What We're Wednesday, we discuss a performance from Africa Nashville happening at the Blue Room this Friday. The group's stated mission includes helping African music find its rightful place in Music City. I spoke with Winship Boyd, who co-founded Africa Nashville with the saxophonist Jeff Coffin, about the organization and this week's show.
I lived in France for 25 years. I had a dance company over there, and we had a lot of African dancers that worked with us. And so I started going over to West Africa more and more. And the last 20 years, I've been going every year. When I moved back to the United States, I really missed the connections. I missed the music. I missed the dancing. I missed the level. And so I started inviting artists to Nashville. And so it started out with 1 artist, 2 artists, and then it's just built up, and I created Africa Nashville as a result so that people could be here all the time. And I remember meeting a reggae group from Nigeria, and they were struggling, because it really wasn't Music City for everybody. And I feel like in the past years, thanks to the Museum of African American Music, thanks to just people knowing the truth about the instruments, where they come from, the banjo coming from the Ngoni, which is African, I feel like people are starting to recognize it more and more, the origins of country music. And so there's a space that's opening. But I wouldn't say that there's really an African music scene here yet. But we're trying to create it. We're trying to be on the forefront. We performed at the Blue Room. We were invited by Sophia Goodman to perform. We had a kora player here at the time. And so we just played, I would say, 45 minutes. And it was a big success. People really enjoyed it. And so they invited us back. It's going to be featuring Ibrahim Ujubate, who's a djembe fola. We're inviting another Ghanaian artist from Oregon. He's an amazing musician and dancer as well. So the two of them will be featured in the first section. And then in the second section, we're going to have two South African dancers who do gumboots, pansula, different African dance styles. A big takeaway for people usually, and we perform all over the place for all sorts of different people of all different ages, from schools to universities, everywhere. First is the energy. It's just got such a positive energy. It's very energizing, so you leave energized. Second of all, it's new, and yet it's strangely familiar because it's the roots of American music.
My first name Ibro, last name Ibrahim Ajubati. My father play balafon, my mom is sing. Everyone he play in the morning, afternoon, the night, non stop. For Africa, Nashville, for see, little bit for me, from my country. Yeah, I'm very happy.
My name is Tumelo Michael Moloi. I'm going to be doing gambot. Gambot, it's like rhythmic or body percussion here in America, but in South Africa we call it gambot. It was born in the mines of South Africa a long time ago. And then it became a dance. It started as a language and then it became a dance later. It's amazing the fact that, we come from a different continent to come here and actually express who we are and what we are and what we've learned over the years. It's something that you cannot really explain. It's a joyous and love and happiness and power, and knowledge and teaching and culture. It's everything.
For more information about Africa Nashville at the Blue Room and other events happening this week, visit WNXP.org. My name is Marquise Munson, and thank you for listening to another edition of What Were Wednesday.
That's it for today's edition of the Nashvillager podcast. We do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday, so subscribe in your favorite podcasting app to make sure you never miss an episode. And if you like this, you'll probably enjoy the Nashvillager newsletter, too. You'll get perspective from more of my colleagues at Nashville Public Radio and links to the stories we're following. Sign up for those daily emails at WPLN.org/Nashvillager. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up tomorrow.